Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of We Watch Shudder. My name is Michelle, and who's here with me?
It's JD.
It's JD. It's always JD. It is
Every
always
single
both of us.
time.
So far, winning streak. If you are new to We Watch Shudder, hello, We Watch Shudder. It's in the name. In case you were confused, Shudder is basically Netflix but for horror movies, and it's a really good site, and we watch it, so we talk about it. Today, we have a very special movie we're going to talk about. What are we doing today, JD?
Well, today, let me tell you, one that I have been excited about since I heard we were going to get to do it, and one that some of us actually got a sneak preview of a couple of weeks ago, thanks to the good folks at Shudder. We are talking about the latest directorial effort from the Italian master Dario Argento. This film is called Dark Glasses.
Dark Glasses, not to be confused with other types of glasses.
Right.
Anyway,
right.
I'm
Dark
running on
glasses.
2 hours of sleep because tonight we have to do a double feature of the Shudder releases. So recording 2 episodes, which meant watching 2 movies. But I also had to work. And then tonight we have a wrestling event that we're sponsoring, Time Bomb Pro Wrestling. So
Michelle got
I'm
up
dead.
At 3 o'clock this. To be fair, she didn't get up. She was just up. But Michelle watched this movie at 3 o'clock this morning Central Time when it originally dropped on Shudder to be ready to still do everything else she needs to do today and still get these episodes out to you. It is double feature day. There's another one that we're going to be dropping called She Will. We'll talk about that in the other episode. Go find it when you're done with this one. Today,
yeah, so no one can ever say that I am not committed to this podcast.
Absolutely not.
Tired.
Michelle is plus also I've seen Michelle's list of so we're doing a new episode of the podcast every day in October, but we recorded them all in advance because we still also want to watch like a movie a day, a horror movie a day in October, or so I thought, because Michelle, about 10 days into the month, sent me her list of movies she's already watched, and it's like 25 titles long.
Do you want to know what I'm at on October 13th?
No, I don't. I'm sure I want to wait until the month is over. I want to at this point I just want to know what your total is on Halloween.
Okay, sounds good, because I ran out of horror movies to watch on streaming sites, so I did watch a couple non-horror movies.
Stop for a minute. I realize we're here to talk about Dark Glasses, and we're going to, but stop for a minute and think about that statement she just made. She ran out of horror movies to watch on streaming services. There are literally hundreds of horror movies on streaming services.
There are technically
Michelle
ones
has seen
that
every single one of them.
I've mostly. There are a couple that I just know I will hate them, so I didn't bother. But yeah, I basically have seen what I want to see out there.
Yeah, you may consider yourself the world's biggest horror movie fan. I, for a long time, considered myself, and still do consider myself, a very serious horror fan. But at the very least, if we're talking about sheer volume of consumption, Michelle puts you all to shame. It's incredible how many movies this lady gets put into her brain on a regular basis.
And the worst part is, I would like to clarify that it's not like I just sit and watch movies. I am incredibly busy.
yeah. She's a hell of a
got a
multitasker.
movie on, and then I'm working on nonprofit work or this podcast or helping my father-in-law with his
She does
art.
3 times as much real-life stuff as I do and still manages to watch 3 times as many horror movies as I do. I don't know how she does it. How she does it is she doesn't sleep. Anyway.
Yeah, I need a therapist. Anyway, hello. Welcome if this is your first time tuning into We Watch Shudder.
Welcome to We Watch Shudder. Man, we have it's been a fun experience listening to those older episodes because, man, we've definitely evolved as a podcast team.
Have we evolved backwards?
Well, I mean, we may be de-evolving. You're right.
All right. Anyway, we have learned
Argento's Dark Glasses. That's what we're here to talk about. Michelle, why don't you read for us, the big description from the Shudder website of what this movie's all about?
Absolutely. So, from the Shudder website, Dark Glasses, directed by Dario Argento, 2022, Italian, 86 minutes, NR. In the highly anticipated return of Master of Horror Dario Argento, an eclipse blocks out the sun, blackening the skies on a hot summer day, harbinger of the darkness that will envelop Diana when a serial killer chooses her as prey. Fleeing her predator, the young escort crashes her car and loses her sight. She emerges from the initial shock determined to fight for her life, but she is no longer alone. Defending her and acting as her eyes is a little boy, Chin, who survived the car accident, but the killer won't give up his victim, who will be saved. A Shudder original. JD, would you like to give your spoiler-free thoughts on this movie?
I sure would. Dario Argento is a legendary director in the horror genre, and for good reason. I am certainly a fan. I am a fan who will also tell you that, look, and some people are probably going to get real mad at me about this, but I honestly think Dario Argento has made more bad movies than he's made good movies. But the good movies he's made are fantastic. And this movie, to me personally, is, I think, the best movie that he has made since at least Opera in 1987, which, shout out, is now available for streaming on Shudder as well. It's almost like Dario went in and said he was going to make an homage to his own career, and I'll talk about that in more detail in the spoilers section. Basic breakdown, I do think the first half of this movie is better than the second half of the movie, and it's certainly not as good as his very best efforts, like movies like Suspiria or Deep Red, but I really enjoyed it. I thought, especially considering some of his more recent work, which I am not a fan of, it was a real exciting return to form for Argento. I'm coming down 3.5 skulls on this one.
3.5 skulls from JD, which is funny because you say it's some of his best recent work and then it's a 3.5 skull. And well, that's just like an indication of what previous movies have been.
He made a version of his last feature directorial debut was 10 years ago, or feature debut. What did I... Anyway, his last feature release was a Dracula adaptation back in 2012 that was, real, and he's had a couple of other things before that were just, I don't know, it just never all quite worked for me, but this one I really, really, really enjoyed for the most part.
Okay. I have a question before I give my rating, because it's a simple yes or no, but it does really affect my rating, so I need to know.
Okay.
Is this a comedy?
No.
Fuck, 1.5 skulls.
Shit.
Okay. then my score is 1.5. I laughed a lot. I needed to know if I was missing something. Okay, 1.5. Anyway, should we get to the spoiler section?
There is definitely a strong thread of absurdism and absurdity running through it, but is it a comedy? No.
Okay, I'm still going with 1.5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ow.
Spoiler section. If you haven't seen this movie, go ahead and go see it, and then come back.
Yeah, go check out Dario Argento's Dark Glasses. Hit the pause button on this podcast. Come back and see what we have to say right now. Michelle, explain yourself.
Okay, so the water snake scene where she's just screaming, covered in snakes. How... just... that perfectly sums up the rest of this movie and how I felt about it. I was like, yep, if people ask why I gave it such a low score, I will point at the water snake scene, because that was very bad. It started so hopeful. I thought the way that they did the entire eclipse at the beginning, where like she puts on the glasses and things get dark. I thought that was cool. When she maced the guy and the camera lens got maced, I thought that was really cool. He had a very good way of bringing us into the scene and feeling like we were a part of it. The way that he would fade out when people are going to sleep, almost as though we were closing our eyes. There's a lot of really cool technical little things that I liked about this. I hated the story. I hated it. I
Wow.
was so bored. The kills are just like so extreme. I've never
Yeah.
gotten knocked down by a door and smashed my entire head open before. The way the female cop ran up to the male cop and was leaning over him and not even assessing the danger of the van who just killed her partner. Like, there were so many very, very bad decisions made by these people, and I hated it. I gave it only 1.5, but it would have been lower if they did not have a dog, and I like dogs, so it gets 1.5.
Nerea.
Yeah,
It's a good
Nerea
dog.
gets the entire 1.5 for me.
Wow. Okay, so before I talk about, I guess where I want to take this now, based on that reaction, is my very first question is, how much Argento have you seen?
Suspiria, original and remake, which I love. I would give both of them 5 skulls.
Okay.
I have seen a couple other things because you told me I had to. But I have not seen Deep Red yet, which you told me I had to. Wait, no, I did see Deep Red and I did not like it.
Okay,
and then
what I want to point out
Yeah.
right away is, as I recall, I believe you saw Deep Red in the edited version. The full unedited version, we were just talking earlier, just a quick note to another horror streaming service called Screambox. Screambox right now also has the complete unedited version of Deep Red, fully restored from a recent process. I mean, based on your reaction to
So-
the edited version, I don't know if the unedited version is going to be enough to change your mind, but you should at least be aware that you haven't actually seen the movie.
so I would like to say that you are saying you didn't like a movie. You should watch a longer version of the movie you didn't like.
Well, yeah, there's what I'm saying is there's a whole, like, there's an entire subplot of the movie that
Yeah.
has been completely removed in the version that you're seeing.
I believe you. I just don't think I like Dario Argento, and that's okay for me.
Well, and the reason I ask is because the criticisms you have about this movie are actually pretty common criticisms of Argento films. Argento, especially when he's working on the writing side of things as well, which he did. He participated in the writing of this film with a couple of other folks. There is very much a thread, like I said, of absurdity in a lot of what he does. A lot of this is very much intended to be sort of more atmospheric and nightmarish and to not necessarily make sense. You're right. There is a lot. And again, like I said, in the second half of the film, it does kind of lose me. And of course, the second half of the film is where the water snake scene happens.
That's where
and-
I really checked out.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
do agree with you in the sense that that is a scene that is sort of, it does epitomize the biggest
Criticisms.
the biggest error or the biggest mistake that I think this movie made.
Mm-hmm.
That scene just doesn't. I get what they were trying to do in concept. The execution of it just doesn't work, right?
Yeah. And it's not like that is my reaction to the whole movie. That's just like
Right,
a perfect
right.
like
Yeah.
what were they
I
thinking?
definitely, while I was watching it, had
Yeah.
a moment when that scene hit of like, oh, like when it first started, I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting, and then it gets just so silly.
It kept
and
going.
so absurd, and it just keeps
Yeah.
going, and then it also it just ends, right? Like all of a sudden they're just out of the water.
They realize
area,
they
and
could
the
walk out
snakes
of
are
the water.
gone, and
Yep.
yeah, it's but I also have to immediately make clear that my reaction to this film is, of course, fully rooted in the fact of a very long history with Argento, right? I've been watching his films for 25 years. He's one of the first names that you will encounter when you start diving just below the surface in the world of horror movies. And So those elements didn't so much bother me because I was like, oh, okay, this is like even in the story, right? Like here's the basic story. You guys have seen the movie now. There's this guy who's killing prostitutes. He causes a car accident trying to kill one prostitute, doesn't kill her, does, however, injure her to blindness, and in that car accident kills a couple of people but manages to not kill their child. And so the child is now an orphan, and somehow the orphan child ends up living with the now blind lady who was in the car accident that killed his parents, and they're teaming up to fight the guy who killed his parents trying to kill her. It's very silly, Scooby-Doo, absurdist sort of stuff when you really break it down. But there is an energy and a spirit to Argento that is just unmatched. The kills in this movie, when at the very beginning, when the first call girl comes out of that hotel, and that dude just whips out the wire from out of the bushes, and is like, it's. There are so many scenes in this movie. That scene, that kill. The ultimate, I mean, you've seen Suspiria. The ultimate end of this movie is basically a restaging of the same kill that happens with the dog eating the dude's throat out in the middle of Suspiria, right? There are so many moments in this movie that are, in a lot of ways, referential or of things that he's done before, which is what makes me say it feels like Argento went in and like deliberately was trying to make an homage to his own career here. And as a long-term fan of Argento, it worked for me. I can't say that your criticisms are invalid. They're just things that didn't bother me because this is so Argento. The best part about it, and then I'm going to stop my rant and let you talk again for a little while. I'm so sorry. Guys, you got to understand, like, when I say, even though I don't like most of his films, Dario Argento is one of the most important filmmakers in the history of my appreciation of horror. Because, again, the ones that I do like, when he is on, it's a masterpiece. And he's not on all the way in this movie, but his horror show is great. There's that shot where the killer shows up in Diana's bedroom, and he's completely silhouetted out, but he's holding the knife, and the knife is perfectly lit and shiny, and it's just... He succeeds in creating such a thick, awesome, dreamlike, nightmarish atmosphere that at some point, at least for me, the absurdity of the story is just actually kind of crucial to that atmosphere, I think.
Interesting. I don't know how, like, segue.
Yeah.
No, I think what you're saying, I completely understand. I'm a Stephen King fan. I have to say, you know, I have seen The Bad Work. That's okay for me. And I've seen him doing homages to things he did previously. I totally get it. I didn't like it, but I'm not criticizing a single person who did like it or is a fan of Argento and they went, oh, this is perfect. It's just without me having that nostalgia, and I had only seen Suspiria for the first time right before the remake came out, so I didn't even have this long history with him as far as
that
I was
movie
aware.
Changed my entire movie viewing life.
And for me, I just saw it like 6 years ago. It wasn't something that I had ingrained in me as like, this is a big pivotal moment. I need to watch more of this. So watching this movie, not caring about the legacy,
right? Yeah.
Not a great experience. But there were really, at the beginning, there were so many really good technical moments that I did make note of, because obviously, like you said, he is a big name. Even if he doesn't make a horror movie that I am a huge fan of overall, like this one, I still recognize the bits and think like that is beautiful art, being made on the screen right now, and I see it and I recognize it. I just don't like the whole thing, and I would never watch it again.
Yeah, and he's like I said, he's long been known as a guy who is definitely more interested in the atmosphere and the visual elements and the set pieces, which again is a weird thing for me to be appreciating, because as a general rule, that's not so much my thing. I think why Argento works for me here is there is at least a plot, right? It's very much still about the atmosphere, but there is a plot put together. It's not it even though the plot is silly and absurd, there's at least a structure there, and that's enough for me to then be able to detach and appreciate the atmosphere around it. Whereas a lot of other movies will try to be atmospheric and psychological and weird, and there will just be no framing that they're putting anything on. And I think that for some reason, I still haven't digested exactly why, but for some reason that seems to be the crux here. Is it's just, God, there were so many times in this movie where I was just like, fuck yeah, like the violence is. He is a master of set pieces of violence and brutality, and it's just. Oh man, it was real nice to see the man doing those things again. Let me ask you this: how did you feel about the music in this movie?
The music was one of the things that I wrote down as a huge positive.
Yeah.
The one sound that they kept repeating made me think of Silent Hill every time I heard it. And I can't remember, but it's like a soft pulsing that they put underneath instead of the very loud music. And it's very, very similar to atmospheric sound from Silent Hill. And I love both the games and the movie of Silent Hill. The first one, we don't talk about the second one at all. But I love that. And so there are those points where seeing in other films I really liked it, seeing in this film I really liked it. Just overall not a thing I enjoyed, but the music was really, really good, and I like the way that he does a huge crescendo of the murders, and he does lean into the absurdity, which is why I had to ask, is this a comedy, because I would feel different about it. But the way that he just goes, it is really ridiculous. It's a lot like Nick Cage. Dario Argento is Nick Cage, but a director, where he's gonna do what he wants. He's gonna do it loudly, and you can like it or not.
That's a real interesting comparison, and I love it. Like, I've never had that thought before, but like the minute you said it, my ears kind of perked up, and I was like, I kind of like you. I understood immediately what you meant by that, and I was like, that's not a bad. I may end up stealing that and using it with other people when I talk about Argento. He's like
Good.
Nick Cage, but as a director. Yeah, you're not wrong at all.
And he's got those hits, but some of them are just ridiculous. And
for sure. Yeah.
Cool. I have nothing that will be better stated from me for the rest of the episode.
Yeah, well,
you like a thing I said, I'm done.
Yeah, and the reason I ask about the music is also a place where Argento has been highly praised for the way he employs it and uses it. The type of music here is very reminiscent, again, of stuff he's done in the past. You mentioned that there are moments where the music is very, very loud, and you're right. That's absolutely an element, especially in the really tense, aggressive, like chase scenes and that sort of thing. It's the music isn't just intense in its rhythm and its musicality, but it's also just very loud, to the extent that I don't know if it's something he continues to do, but well known that when he made the original Suspiria, where the music by Goblin is crucial to the entire atmosphere of the movie, he got a lot of atmosphere out of the performances, because in those scenes he had a giant PA system on stage, like on the sound stage, and would actually blast the background music for the scene at incredible volumes while the actors were performing around it. There's something about volume that I think sometimes gets lost or misused, and Argento uses. He's a very dynamic filmmaker, right? He uses a lot of. He's often talked about for his use of light and shade and colors and that sort of dynamics. But in other places in the music, he's just a master of those audio dynamics and playing them to just heighten the frayed nerves of a lot of what's going on there, and I loved it.
Yeah, I something about this movie. So this is a thing I wouldn't say very often, but watching this movie, I didn't feel like he was a bad director. I just didn't like the movie.
Yep.
But there are a lot of other movies where I would say this director messed up pretty badly. And in this case, it's clear he has a talent. He has an eye for things. He has an ear for things. It's not my cup of tea, but unlike a lot of other movies, I wouldn't say this was made by a bad director. It's just a thing I don't like. It is an art is subjective thing. This is a very clear art is subjective.
No, I can respect that for sure. And but yeah, so I think where we're ultimately concluding here is if you are familiar with Argento and you are kind of a fan, this one may work well for you. It's not going to live up to the standard of his masterpieces, and how could it ever at this point? He has such a legacy behind him. But if you're not already really attached to Argento, you might find some things in it that work for you, but it's probably not the one that's going to make you an Argento fan.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So yeah, that's Dark Glasses, guys. Like I said, it was just super cool for me to see an Argento film that I enjoyed again. I have to believe the experience of getting to see it as part of the super secret screening on October 1st that Shudder did was also just a crucial part of the excitement, and I hope they do more of that stuff. We actually tweeted at them to see if they would give us at least a hint on what the screening was. And granted, they may have just been feeding me a line, but got a reply back from Sam Zimmerman there at Shudder on the Twitter, who said, "Yeah, me and Craig Engler, the boss, we don't even know what the movie is. All we know is they're showing a movie." So I don't know. He probably knew and was feeding me a line. Maybe he didn't know. It doesn't matter. The experience of that was something that, don't get me wrong, I understand the value of on-demand cinema and the value of streaming services, but there is something in that experience of knowing that, like, oh, this is a thing that's happening just one time right now, and even if I'm not at a theater with a bunch of people, I'm having still that communal experience of there are some of us who are getting to enjoy this right now together. It was super cool. I hope they do more of that stuff. We got another episode yet to record. Michelle still has to get back to work, so
and then I have to try to sneak in a half-hour nap before going to wrestling.
Oh, good luck. Say goodnight, Michelle.
Good night, Michelle.